I'm a social worker by background, and I've been doing a lot of work in childhood and family, probably for about 30 years, and the last 10 to 12 years particularly in mental health with this organisation. Now, I always get nervous at the beginning of a presentation, so I might need to take a few deep breaths. And I've sort of got some notes here to remind myself of some things. So, I'm going to talk about what we've done within our organisation. And I just have to get the button right. So I want to talk about what Ruah is. Ruah is a community-based organisation, but I'll describe that in a bit. And we've had a commitment to family inclusive practice for a number of years. And what I'm going to talk about today is the Child Aware project, so how we've tried to pay more attention to the needs of children and people in their parenting role. So this is the organisation. There's about 200 staff. The major areas are mental health, so community-based mental health recovery programs, and we also provide a range of services to women, domestic violence, coming out of prison, and we have an area of work in homelessness and housing services too.
What does Ruah stand for?
Next slide. It's a Hebrew word, and it means wind, breath, spirit of life. The organisation comes out of a Catholic tradition, the Daughters of Charity, and so our mission is really around that, or vision and mission is really around working with the most marginalised in the community, and that's our value, our vision and value statement. We've got 2 websites. We're about to launch or relaunch this website here. It's going to look flash and gorgeous. No one's paid any attention to it for a few years. And our interest in children is again around, if we're working with marginalised groups of people, then, their children are marginalised and disadvantaged by definition. And so we're looking for the opportunities to support people as parents and the needs of children. Over the course of a year, this is some data from a couple of years ago, that we were in contact with over 800 children through the services that we offered. Yep, so there's an opportunity there for a massive amount of early intervention. And in some instances, maybe even some primary prevention. Now these data you'll be very familiar with anyway, that 1 in 5 Australians experience mental illness in the course of a 12-month period, 45% across a lifetime, and of course people with mental illness are just as likely to experience as anyone else in the community. So in Australia, the data looks like about 20% of children would be growing up in a family where a parent has a mental illness at some point or another. And we know that they're significantly more vulnerable for issues that relate to mental illness, but probably more to how we treat people who experience mental illness. So it's the social context. Here's a gorgeous photo of a gorgeous family. So over the years, Ruah's been actively involved in paying attention to the whole family. When we talk about family inclusive practice, it's not, it gets scrambled up a bit with family work. People think that means you work with families all the time. And I guess we're trying to start from a position of, because we're working with, our services are funded to work with individuals, how is it that we acknowledge the context of people's lives? How is it that we really understand who's important and valuable in their lives, and how do we include them in some way in service planning and information sharing, and how do we negotiate all of that? So that's what we try to do in terms of connecting with clients who's significant to them. And we also want to then take the next step of saying, well, if this is who's important to you, what are the other issues that might be affecting you and the family, and how do we take these things into account? We acknowledge the importance of family inclusive practice by ensuring that all new workers get some orientation into that, and that's across the whole of the organisation, and they need to do that within, I think, the first 6 months or so that they join us. And that's to help them get on board with those things. We've paid attention to parenting roles in a number of ways over the years. So our first attempt at that was to run a pilot program in 2000 to 2005, where we worked with the whole family, where there were children under 12. We gave priority to children under 6 to support them. So that was really our way of exploring what our responsibilities were and what sorts of things might we be able to offer. And we tried to do that very much in partnership and in collaboration with other services as well as with families. In Western Australia, there has been what we've called the Children and Parents with Mental Illness initiative. And that has had some very exciting moments where it's really been able to pull together a wide range of government, state government services, as well as NGOs and consumer and carer groups to explore some of the issues. Now, it's never been well resourced, and so it's sort of fallen off the agenda, but there's been a couple of good outcomes, which is the development of some cross-sector training, which we continue to run. We've been funded to do that, so we continue to do that. And there were some good interagency protocols that were developed, really simple, really doable from my point of view, but they've sort of fallen off the agenda too, because again, it's about resources to implement. And we developed some booklets with families, from the point of view of what are the sorts of things that have helped you in your life and what are the sorts of things you would like to say to other people, other families who are walking in similar shoes, what would be helpful to them. So we developed those, and we also would use that as a starting point for a series of workshops to run with the whole family. So a bit similar, well, different, because we actually included parents, children, invited parents to invite other people. So who's important to you, who supports you in the parenting task? Do you want your mum to come? Do you want your sister to come? Do you want your best mate down the street to come? And ran those as a series of workshops. And we're just getting the final evaluations just being put together now, which you have the final report by the end of the year. And the training I've already mentioned. So this is our question, it's really what's our responsibility to people as parents and to their children. In the Child Aware project, we took that a bit further and said, what are the skills, knowledge and organisational supports required so that workers and parents know how each child is doing? Because what we understand in practice is that, we employ people to work with adults. We don't expect them to know about child development. We don't employ them for those skill sets, although some of them will have those skill sets and that experience. But it's really, we know that workers are quite good at noticing when things aren't working. We wanted them to get better at noticing when things are working so they can support and reinforce that. But also to think about, be able to anticipate and to support parents to anticipate difficulties that might emerge or opportunities to celebrate things that they might not have noticed before. So in this project, this is what we were doing. We wanted to improve service delivery to those children. That doesn't mean that we would provide the services. That would just mean that we were sure that services were available should families and children need them. To improve workers' building confidence in those areas and to contribute to what we're calling an evolving child-centred, family-inclusive practice framework within the organisation. And we also wanted to build in the data collection and evaluation measures. How do we know what we're doing? How do we know whether that's going to be successful? What other information is going to be useful to us so that we understand the issues and the implications? So the project itself looked like this. So we did do some research. We had a look at the research. We asked managers and workers about what skills and knowledge they had and what they needed and what was in their current practice. We asked young people and children, so from about 12 upward, 12 to 20. We didn't have a lot of time in this project. We had to squish it all into 6 months because that's what we had the funding for. But that was really illuminating, and we thought it was really important to do because there's children in families where services come in and offer things and do things, and we didn't know what the kids' experience of that is, what impact it had on them, whether that was helpful from their point of view, and whether there are opportunities for them to sort of be engaged in the process as well, or whether that's something they wanted. We also did that with parents. We wanted to know what parents thought about just the whole idea of being more family inclusive or being concerned about their children. So if we're interested in your children, what's your response to that? And of course we got a whole range of stuff back, like, yeah, well, we assume you pay attention to our kids anyway. We assume that you're professionals, so you would let us know if something was going wrong. We expect that you'll do that. And of course others were very wary of that because they thought that that meant that, well, that means you're, you know, really interrogating us and you'll get child protection involved. And so the whole gambit of views is sort of there. We reviewed our organisational procedures and policies too, to have a look at whether they supported family inclusive practice, whether they supported workers and provided a structure for them to be able to operate effectively within. And that was a really mixed bag. And we looked at data collection. You know, so what's the data we currently collect? What do we already know about families and children, and what are the sorts of things we need to add to that so that we are better informed? And the primary outcome was really to have a look at developing some training. So the emerging themes for all of those conversations were that there were a high number of families that are already linked with child protection and family support services, that workers were actually looking for resources for their teams to use with families. There's significant differences in teams' capacity to work with families. So some of our services, I was looking up there for an organisational map, it's not there anymore, like the homelessness and housing services are very short term. So they'll be involved with families for maybe 3 months at the most. And there's limited opportunity there to really engage around the parenting needs, unless they're part of the difficulty that people are experiencing in say, tenuous tenancy situations, so that we might directly work with them if that's the case. So there's a whole range of things that we needed to look at if we were trying to develop some sort of framework that was going to be able to be, you know, used right across the whole organisation. Some workers were really unclear about their responsibilities and duty of care to children, so those sorts of things needed to be explored as well. And people were wanting to know how to support clients as parents. Like, how do we do that? We're really concerned. We can see they're struggling. How do we help them? So that all went to you know, looking at these sorts of things. So most of them wanted training. A lot of them wanted professional development. I couldn't quite work out what the difference was myself. But and supervision, you know, having good supervision around the issues was really key to what a lot of people thought was going to be really supportive for them. And again, good policies and procedures to support the work. And we wanted to add the good data and evaluation systems. How do we know what we're doing? So this is what we developed. We developed three modules of training, and the first was really addressing people's needs to really understand the impact of diversity on early childhood, brain development, attachment, all of those sorts of things. And we also built in resilience to that sort of framework too. And again, I think that's really useful because it stops people from trying to fix things. You know, workers sort of, you know, think their job is to fix things, and that's not always the case. Sometimes our job is really to get out of people's way. Sometimes it's really just to be present, to support them in their efforts to make changes in their own lives. So the resilience framework's sort of in that as well. The second module is really more about practice, skills and strategy. So how do we have these conversations with parents? What are your hesitations and fears and wobbly bits, and what sort of practice do you need to have to be able to feel more confident about doing that? And the third is around the child wellbeing and understanding roles and responsibilities is what we've got it. Now we divided that into two parts because of the high level of anxiety that some workers experience around how to engage with or work collaboratively with child protection services. And that's always a mixed bag. Thank you. So we divided it into two. The first part, finding your way through the child protection system, we actually invited another organisation in to deliver. because that's their gig, and that's fitting. That's Family Inclusion Network of Western Australia, and they are really an advocacy group. So they work with families who are engaged in some way with the child protection system and need someone to walk beside them. So they're really good at providing training. And we added the, what are our practice procedures in there? So how should we be tackling these child wellbeing practice issues ourselves? Data collection used to be really good, and we actually had really good data about kids in the system. And then we got a new system, revised, new computer data-based, drives everyone bonkers, but didn't include the information we had in the first instance. Yeah. So we've adapted that again, so we actually do know about parental status and children's age, their living circumstances, and whether child protection is involved or not. And we also have, like, child wellbeing and parenting have always been identified as areas of work or domains of work. So we can pull that out of our existing data system too, so we know how much of that. We did a snapshot in 2012 to try and pull that information together. And we want to be able to analyse practices and understand, practice changes and understand children and parents' needs. So I'll talk a little bit about this. We developed a child wellbeing plan. Thank you. 3 minutes. I'll just run. I won't talk about data collection at all. I'll just let you look at these as I flick past them. That just lets us know that at that point in time, probably, we had about a third of the children were in each of those, like under 5, 6 to 10, and 11 to 16. Most of them were living with the client, the parent. But we've got a whole range of other situations in terms of child protection, other parents, or living with other family members, and that becomes really obvious. The child wellbeing plan is a really simple little piece of paper that I won't try and wave in front of you. But it's really to support workers to have conversations with families about their kids. And it's worked really, really well. And we've the other tool we've developed was really to provide a framework for decision making within the organisation around people when they have serious concerns about children's wellbeing. And that's really to support reflective practice. Right, people would say that they knew what to do, but we didn't have consistent procedures that were written across the whole organisation. So we're in the process of sort of pulling that together now. But this was just a reflective tool to sort of say, to help people to identify and reflect on. I've only got 1 minute. Anyway, but in the trial, the child wellbeing tool, we got people to trial in 2 teams. And one was in our mental health inner city team, and the other was women's support program working with women coming out of prison. We supported those 2 teams by, they'd already done the training, we revised it with them, and then we did some training on how to use the data collection tools, which are really pretty basic. And we did that for 3 months. And I've got a piece of paper here to tell you. Over that time, we did, wrong piece of paper. Oh, that's a child wellbeing tool. We had about 105 pieces of information about families that we didn't have before. That came down to about 30 children, 30 children, of whom, I'm sorry, I've lost, you know how you get stressed and you go blind? Yes. I'm just blind. And I know I'm out of time.
You're not out of time, you're out of it's the interactive opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Knew it somewhere. So we got 105 sets of data from families that both those teams were involved in. There were 35 children that we're aware of across those families, and we've got data for 25. There's child wellbeing conversations in terms of we 21 of those 25 were had. what we asked workers to do, we had a rating scale on the child wellbeing plan that was to encourage parents to work out how worried they were or not, yeah? And where it was a 4 or a 5, which means the parents were really quite worried and thought there were serious concerns, we asked them to support parents to develop a bit of a plan around how they might address that. And there's been the story that goes with it as well. And of the children, there were 7 of those 21 children where the ratings were in the 4 to 5 area. And we thought we only had 4 plans, and I was really worried. I'm thinking, you've got a rating here of 4 or 5, and there are big concerns, and you haven't got a plan, what's going wrong? But what we discovered was that one of those children was in the placement, and the other issues were around workers actually uploading the data. Yeah, so there's, how do we have to go back and have a look at that. So they've done it, they just didn't know they've done it.
Would it be okay, Carol, if the
To
audience...
stop there, yeah?
Yeah, and the audience has had an opportunity to ask some questions and engage.
Fine.
So, audience, would you like to ask some questions and engage in conversation?
So throughout the whole, if you look at it as a project, and you guys
Yeah.
seem like you took on a lot in a relatively short period,
Yeah.
what would you say the biggest challenges are or were for you guys?
I think we sort of pulled off a minor miracle developing all that and doing that work in 6 months. The challenges for us now are implementing it, right? Which is why we've gone with the trial. We asked 2 teams to play, if you like, rather than trying to get the whole organisation to do it in the first instance. So we could sort of see whether that was realistic and doable. And it's turning out that way. So we've got some compliance issues, we've got some training issues. There's probably some quality assurance issues as well. So if we go back and have a look at the sorts of plans that people have developed, are they good ones? Do they actually address the issues that families have identified? Are families really happy with that? So it's giving us, a framework to really explore the issues very well. And we'll do a formal sort of review of that when we get back. The other issue with all of this was our data system that was supposed to just spit out fantastic reports failed. It failed. So our software failed, and we're still waiting for people to come and fix that. So the data that I have pulled out has been pulled out manually. So, in terms of anything in an organisation happening, you really need sort of a big length of time. So I'd be thinking about the next 2 years really before we've got this, running well. One of the other things that we have done though is really added the opportunity to do a small short intervention. So we've got some staff who are extremely skilled and completing this, psychology registration stuff, and need some opportunities to do some additional work across the lifespan. So we're having a look at whether we can offer a short intervention to some of these families where there isn't a plan, to help them develop. That didn't quite answer your question, did it?
You did.
Yeah.
Very much, thanks.
This is sort of a general question I have about the whole sort of theme of the conference. And ask you in particular. I'm a parent myself. I'm a consumer parent, and my children are adult children, doing very, very well. But I remember when I would go in for help, if things weren't going well, there were frequently providers who would focus on the kids, and I couldn't get help.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm wondering, and that was really frustrating, because I knew if I could get better, I would be fine.
Yes. Yes.
And please pay attention to me, I'm asking for help.
Yes. Yes.
And kids want to be with their parents.
Of course they do.
So I'm wondering how, what your experience was with the parents, sort of balancing helping them work on their mental health recovery and talking about their responsibilities, and then focusing on, I'm very interested in the child wellness plan and the interaction around that and things like that. So maybe
families have loved it. So if I indulge and sort of go on, we had worker feedback. So they have things like needing to print forms and what have you. But it came as an email right, from a worker who was really enthusiastic. She was just really so pleased. She said, today I've used the form with a client. She has 2 children in child protection, DCP, Department of Child Protection Care. She was so pleased to do an exercise that related to the care of her children. And out of this, we've had some discussions that we never would have had. And she just wanted to say thank you, and parents wanted to say thank you as well. And this was a woman in the support service, so this woman was in prison or just coming out of prison. Her children were in care of the department. She had concerns. She wasn't well informed. She didn't know what was going on. There's an obligation in the child protection system to provide a care plan to parents so that everyone knows what's going on. She didn't know what the care plan was. You know, so there was a real opportunity here to advocate. And often, you know, parents don't really understand what their rights are. Yeah, so that was a great opportunity. So this woman's now got much more information. And one of the things that I was insisting that workers did is not just to go, oh, this family doesn't have their kids with them, so I'm not going to talk to them about parenting. It's like, you're a parent. This is really a central part of who you are in your life. So let's talk about what that means to you and what your concerns are. So it's been a wonderful vehicle. One of the workers, not this one, another one, came bowling into the office, full of enthusiasm because she had just had this conversation with a client of hers and what was an estranged partner. And she was just full of it. I've actually got a video that I'm going to show you, but how well it worked as a way of engaging with people around their parenting, but also getting parents focused on the needs of children when so often there's so much going on in their lives that they're not actually invited to think about how the kids are doing. Yeah, and so that can be a huge relief. Wow, someone's actually interested in who I am as a parent and is interested in how my kids are going. And actually this is such a great opportunity because now I'm starting to think about, well, what do I know about how they're doing and what can we do about it? Did that sort of answer your question? Sorry.
But it's okay. I don't mean to talk more.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. I've only got 1 minute, we should finish there, unless someone's got a question.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.